Okay. Nope. Okay, everyone. Hopefully, this is kicking in. Just wait for this to hurry up. We get this show on the road. Okay. So hopefully everyone can hear me. Let me know, because the the YouTube studio is not working as always. This will happen last time, but I think we are live. And hey guys, good. I think there's people in the chat, which is good to see. And Happy New Year, everyone, obviously. Someone has said they haven't come up on your feed. Yes, last few weeks have been a bit crazy with work, and then I got the traditional man flu, which was always a bit of fun. And then, of course, those that don't know, the other half not doing so well with the big C. So hopefully that gets pushed out of the way over the next few months. So yeah, apologies for the lack of videos, and it's good to see a few of you trickling into the live chat already, which is awesome. As I said, let me know if you can hear me or not and everything like that, because one, there's always a little lag between the OBS system and YouTube live, and the studio just isn't showing anything at all on YouTube either. So I'm only going on the basis that I can see myself on a YouTube screen and people are responding, so that's awesome. So I hope you guys had a good holiday period, and of course let's all have a really good 2024. Awesome. Just going to check one other thing. There we go. I think that's it. Okay, guys. So there's a few topics just to cover off really quickly. Spurs are on tonight, so I've got about 40 odd minutes. It's an opportunity to just run through a few things about 2024. And then we're going to go into some charts. So anything that you guys want to go through in the chart formats, just let me know. Ping them in the chat, and I'll pick those up. Hopefully they're all on TradingView, and we can get going. I've got a few that I'll go through straight away. I'm interested. Litecoin Power Ledger, guys, is absolutely flying today. We'll go into a bit more detail about that one as well. And as I said, any of the other projects or assets that you guys want to run through, chuck them in the chat for sure, and we will take a look at them. So looking forward to this one. It's the first live one I've done for some time. So now we're in the new house down here by the coast, and we can obviously get more of these done. I'm hopefully going to try and do this at least once a week. As you guys know, so much is going on in the background. It's very difficult sometimes to find the time to do videos, every day and on every single different project. So sometimes it's nice to do these weekly ones now, and talk about everything that everyone wants to. So just go through these comments quickly. Yes, mentioned Arthur about the videos. Hopefully you're well, my friend. NXRA gone from fifth to top spot in your portfolio. That is absolutely awesome to hear. It's absolutely staggering project, that one. We'll try and cover that one as well. I'll try and bring up some chart data for that. And we got a Lee as well, of course, must be a Spurs fan. Yes, if you haven't noticed before, I've got a lot. Do you know what? This morning I did a video with Dr. From Power Ledger, Vivek, and it was absolutely fascinating conversation. Hopefully we'll have that going out on Monday. But the two shelves behind me on in the thing behind me, the bookcase thing, completely collapsed. So in this video, we're trying to have this professional conversation, and those two shelves are all over the place. There's things all over the floor, and I didn't notice till halfway through. I was like, I've got a lot of books missing, but there they were. So yes. Also, of course, the posters behind me. I'll move out of the way slightly. You've got yes. Very much one about if you want to become the 1%, you've got to do what the 99% won't. And of course, the famous Leonardo DiCaprio meme there, a bit of a Bitcoin poster. And there's a one behind me about trading. I think it says trade your plan, not your emotions, but you can't see it very well. I got those on Temu, and they came as fabrics. I thought they were canvases, but they came as rolled up fabrics. So now I've got to spend time and money on finding canvases to wrap them around. So at the moment they're just stuck on with tape. So there we go. Kingdom Sam, XLM. Yes, I have not done a video on those guys for a while. For those that don't know, I'm actually doing some additional work in other things that I do with regards to AI and machine learning, etc. I do quite a bit for a few blockchain companies as well. And ironically, speaking quite regularly with the Stellar team, which is absolutely fantastic. So as I develop some content with those guys, I will definitely share that with the channel, and especially with the conversations that we have with some of these big massive chains and protocols. It's really phenomenal to be involved with them on a daily basis. So that's another reason why there's been a lack of videos from my side, is just learning and developing networking conversations across the board. So it's amazing as well to see people from around the world connecting in today. So I see Crypto Photos, awesome, from San Jose, California. That is brilliant. My brother just moved, he moved last year to Chicago. I've yet to go to America, so that is on my list. Maybe I'll do a Whales of Wall Street tour or something. We'll see. Guys, let's go into a few of these topics quickly. I want to talk about 2024 in general, because there's obviously some big things going on, not just in the crypto space, but just generally in finance and the way that the world is working at the moment. And this really much loops around, or very much loops around, to the points I'm going to make about the movements, potential movements of the crypto market. So we're going to spend a few minutes on this, and then we'll go into the charts. So let's just start off really quickly with some thought processes around kind of like a prediction video I did quite recently. But I've got a WhatsApp group, and we talk regularly about all the different macro trends and all the things going on around the world. And there was loads of really interesting things that were coming into fruition this year. So we've obviously got the ETF potential. Whether that gets approved in January or not, I'm not sure. I personally am still on the fence with whether it will be approved in this month or not. But that is definitely a big story, irrespective of whether it's now or in 6 months. It's huge, right? It's absolutely a huge point in time. Now, these ETFs obviously then branch out to the opportunity for people to have these as pension funds and things like this. So you're going to have two audiences coming in. You're going to have a mass audience that are just generally interested in the hyper crypto that will come in the bull cycle, whenever that may be, the proper one. And then you've got a big load of people that are not even knowing, their pension funds may just be accommodating towards crypto assets moving forward. So there's some really exciting things going on in that spectrum. We've got the halving event for Bitcoin as well. If my memory serves me well, which I think I pulled up on an article here somewhere, in my recollection, 2024 is around April. I think it's there we go, April 23rd. So this is the Bitcoin halving event, which very much affects the mining capacity, the monetary value that miners get, And of course, then aspects of more scarcity, etc., and how much more work needs to be done to mine Bitcoin. So this is a really exciting aspect to it for sure as well. I'm just going to switch to the browser, see if I can reduce myself slightly. Apologies, I haven't got my green background, so I can't quite get rid of myself completely. But let's just have a look at a few of these bits and pieces. So yes, the halving event, obviously in April. Now, categorical orders are very interesting here, because if we have the ETFs, some are arguing that we're going to have an acceleration in price. Some are arguing that we may already have factored in a lot of the Bitcoin price from the last few months into this decision already, and that we might see a correction, people selling off now that that news has accumulated. So that buy the rumor, sell the news aspect or narrative could play in this as well. So this is why we have to be really strategic and measure like the risk assessments really heavily in our minds as to which way this could go. So some people have been taking advantage along the way, up and down. In some instances, I have been doing that in a couple of assets, just because some of them I've actually broken even on over the last few years, which I've been waiting a long time for, and adjusting the points there. But of course, yes, it could go the other way. So we've got this. We've got the ETF capacity as well, but there's loads of really big things going on, guys, as well in the background beyond this that we really need to think about. So one thing that I pulled out here is, of course, the interest rate aspects. So here in the UK, they're floating around 7%, something stupid like this at the moment. And still to this day, people are still cautious about how much they're spending, when they're spending, what they're spending it on. And there's no real full official indication as to when this will start downgrading itself. And usually what happens is the Fed over in the US dictate a certain percentage uprise or downgrade or stability of this. And then the UK tends to follow like a few days or a week or so afterwards. Sometimes it's the other way around, but it's usually the US Federal Reserve aspects that kind of make this kind of decision for pretty much the most of the world. So we've got this to consider about. And certainly here in the UK, as I said, there's a confidence battle at the moment. Into regards to there's a lack of money or disposable income that people can put into markets or investments and things like this. We're just mostly surviving at this moment in time. And this, of course, affects like mortgage rates and things like that. Now, there's a bit of research. Unfortunately, I can't find the chart that was sent to me on WhatsApp a few months ago. It was from Goldman Sachs. And it showed a predictive trend line of 2024. And what I found really interesting is, and kind of what I expected, I don't really expect anything drastic going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. We've had the rises, and there's going to be a bit of a stability aspect. It might drop maybe 0.25, points or whatever you want to call it, 0.25% in those quarterly fashions. But for the big triggered ones downwards, I think it's going to be a bit longer than that. And I think that's where their prediction was very interesting. It kind of played into the aspect of Q3. As I said, I can't find the diagram, but this kind of relates to roughly what I saw in terms of an article aspect. So with those rates being at the 5.5% mark over in the US, they anticipate that we may start seeing the proper rate cuts from Q3 onwards. What's interesting about this time frame, partially to historic data, is whether the ETFs get approved or not in January, you've still got a process of that they will probably not go live at that time. I'd be very surprised if they do. So there's going to be a gap. And in that gap, you've got the halving event as well. And usually with the halving event, even with that aspect, if you look at the historic data of halving events, it doesn't always happen. Like a market fluctuation, whether it's up or down, doesn't tend to happen straight away all the time. Or it does maybe like a quick impact over a 24, 48 hour period. But then there's a bit of a gap, say 2 or 3 months before it takes an effect. So if we take that into consideration, so April, towards the end of April being the halving event, we've got then May, June, July. Now, ultimately, August, September, October, November, December fall within Q3/Q4. So we could anticipate potentially that this is coordinated to an extent, in the sense that we will potentially have rate cuts in Q3 around that July, August time. We will also have a potential ETF aspects in play. We have the halving event that's already occurred. So we've got all these big structural things worldwide that have potentially already happened or about to happen that people are going to be preparing for. And I truly believe that this is the rough area where we will see the proper bull run kick in. What we're seeing now, in my opinion, is yes, absolutely an upward cycle. It's brilliant to see opportunities and advantages have been taken, but this is not, in my opinion, the full bull run like the one that we saw in 2021 or 2018. Absolutely, because I think there's some trigger points still to occur, like we had in March 2020, for example, is a prime example, where obviously everyone went into lockdown, for example, and that March 2020 there was a big crash, enough for people to go, now's my chance. And of course, what happened after that was the start of the cycle. So I think we're going to have something that brings that market down potentially, whether that's 40%. If it goes down to 70% more, it's going to be quite crazy in my opinion, but it's possible. But I think that's going to be where we might see this fluctuation pattern of opportunity for people to come into this and then the rise. And of course, when that happens, we've also got things like the US election, which I believe is in November. So you can start to see the pattern here. I'm just going to pull these out because we talked about this so many times in the past. The RTGS, the remittance system of the world, which is going fully digital. The compliance of ISO 20022 integrated with this as well. This essentially properly starts in the summer of 2024. So by the end of November, most of these mandates and enhanced data algorithms aspects will be integrated. They essentially switch it on. By November 2025 is when everyone has to be aligned with this strategically in terms of compliance, regulations, standards, everything. Which is why a lot of banks, if you have a business bank, for example, or a business account, you may have had like an ISO 222 leaflet through the door already, and I'm sure many of you will get that throughout. Lee, exactly what we just said. Elections too. It's exactly a really interesting pinpointed time. Arthur, you asked about halving. I'll come back to that in a minute, for sure. It is quite an interesting topic. So we've got all of these things happening at a similar time, right? The other things that are going on in the background, of course, everything that's going on in the Red Sea. I'm not going to go into political discussions here of what I think and don't think, but I think, again, a lot of this is very coordinated in the sense, if you look at the patterns, all the way back from May, finding gas and oil depositories in the Red Sea, and then within a few months inviting the likes of Eni and BP and loads of other big companies into the coordination of coming along, come and have a look at all these opportunities to get this gas and oil that's coming out. And then a few months later, of course, dropping out. And whilst that happens, the US production sees significant amounts of rises in the barrel costs and things from the productions of the US oil. So there's all these things going on, and I can envision that these next 6 to 9 months are going to be very interesting indeed, to that timed point of around August/November time this year, where I truly think that the cycles will start to really kick in. Let us know what you think about that in the comments below. I seem to have lost my browser completely for some reason on the background. Oh, there it is, come back all of a sudden. So yeah, there's loads of interesting things for sure in the background that we have to kind of like look at. The halving event of Bitcoin is quite interesting. It's been occurring since it kind of started. So it's kind of like where the circulation of it gets kind of half, and also the reward system for how people are mining the Bitcoin tends to kind of like continue, but a lot of that reward reduces as well. So not only that, but you also get the blocks that are created get reduced as well. I might do like a separate video on this in particular, because I don't want to give like snippets of information and still not have a full understanding of this. But it is really interesting, and it's not the first time. There have been many of them, as you can see on the screen right now. 2012 was one of the first. I think one was 2013. Maybe I'm making that up, but that might have been when the bull cycle kicked in 2013 at that time. But you can see all the others as well kicking in for that. So yes, indeed, it's very much something that we need to keep an eye on, of all these crazy things that are happening around the world, and all these aspects of ETFs, the interest rates, the mortgage rates, everything, because it does play its part in where this market is potentially going. So I just thought I'd throw those out there while we had a moment to look at those in a bit more detail as topics. But let's go, guys, into the charts, because there's loads of things to talk about, and I know you guys are itching to request some assets that you guys might want to run through with me. I'm going to see if I can remove this browser off here and then switch to the chart as well. Give me 2 seconds. As I said, if there's any particular assets that you want to run through, do leave them in the comments and we will run through them. Obviously, this is the first live show done for a long time, so I'm getting my bearings back with everything, where everything is. So let's start off first and foremost with Bitcoin, really, because it's had some really interesting moves over the last few days. Here we go. I'm going to see if I can reduce myself a bit more, because I will throw in fact, I'll move myself to the top, I think, because I can then bring in the indicators underneath me as well. Hopefully that's a bit better. So looking at Bitcoin at this moment in time, of course, current price point 43,598, nearly 43,600. We can see the last couple of days have been very interesting indeed. Of course, the market, some call it a crash, it's more of a correction, really, because we were so overpurchased in so many assets. It was inevitable that we would have a bit of a catch up. So we actually saw that price. We opened here on the 2nd of January, I think at 44,220. And then, of course, that drop in the day went down to a low of 40,625. So actually quite significant, near enough, pretty much nearly $4,000 to $5,000 lost in that day. And it crept itself back up the day after, i.e. yesterday, pulled itself back up to fruition. And then we're pretty much stabilized to where we were a few days ago, to be honest. So where we are with Bitcoin at the moment is quite interesting. We're still in this scaled up area. So these are areas that I drew in a long time ago of interest, certainly not necessarily from accumulation perspectives, but areas of interest from potential support and resistance lines. And that's still very much in fruition. It's still in play if we look at this in finer detail. So if you actually look across the board where these lower spectrums, including the one yesterday that we dropped down, so around about 40,977, it's very much matching up quite nicely with these markers that we've seen in the past, in 2020, throughout 2021 as well. And of course, this crazy volatile area here, where we saw a bit of resistance and support testing throughout that period of January 2022 up till March 2022 as well. So we're in a very fine area, in my opinion. Some people laughed at me thinking that it would come down again back to 30,000, maybe even lower than that. There's still an opportunity for that, in my opinion. It's not to say it will definitely happen, but if we think about this, it is massively overpurchased over the last few months. I strongly believe, it's not financial advice, just my personal opinion, that a lot of this was purchased up because of the ETF conversations. And this leads me back to my point that I made earlier in this video, or this topic video, is have we already factored in the pricing based on the ETF opportunities, the potential opportunities in January? Because that could then swing us back down. Once that news releases, we know that there's probably not going to happen immediately. There's going to be a few months gap. People want to take advantage of a slight hype. I'm sure there will be one within the 24-hour period, and then a slump. And then where that goes is a big question, because some would argue that we could see a potential 30% drop at least, maybe up to 40. And that does take us down back to around the 30,000, but it's very way off. It sounds a bit crazy to say it when we're so high up, but I tried to be a bit balanced in this thought process. And at the end of the day, no one really knows, which is why we have to be really strategic with our positioning in both the selling and the buying opportunities for sure as well. I'm just going to swing back into the chat quickly, just in case there's any requests for assets. Arthur, I'm looking also at getting into uranium commodities. Good to have something real in terms of investment. Actually, a really good point, this. F says, make sure you watch the FA Cup game. Absolutely. This is why I've got probably about 20 minutes left. I will try and do another video either Monday, Tuesday next week live as well. But yes, Spurs are on tonight. But yeah, back to your point, Arthur, before we swing out too much of crypto. I have done a lot of investment recently in hydrogen stocks. Not necessarily ETFs, but hydrogen in general. I think this is a huge market for the future. And also, I'm very interested in life science, life biology stocks as well. Very much around immunotherapy, especially with the research that I've had to unfortunately do due to circumstances at home. But learning about all these different areas, a lot of money in these areas is quite phenomenal. Hydrogen reminds me of crypto at the moment. There's a lot of negativity comes in and out, and there's bad news, but then in the same day with the same news media companies, they're promoting hydrogen because the government's just spent 700 million or billions of dollars or pounds on infrastructure for hydrogen. So you're kind of like, it just reminds me of crypto. Like, don't listen to the media, just follow your instincts or your guts and what you believe in, and what you know is most importantly is what you know. So that's a bit about Bitcoin. Let us know what you think about this in the comments below, or in the live chat, because I do think there's an opportunity for some lower spectrums of Bitcoin. I'd be staggered if it just had an upward trend forever. So let's see how that goes. I'm going to flip to Power Ledger, guys, and I'm going to open it up to your suggestions. Actually, it's Power Ledger, and I'm going to talk about Litecoin quickly as well. Litecoin is something I haven't really even, I don't think I've done a video on Litecoin before, but it's something I held in 2020, had a good success with it in the uprise in 2021, and I'm seeing similar feelings towards it right now. So we'll go into that a bit more detail, but look at this from Power Ledger, guys. 80% or 82% up on the week. Today alone has been seeing some staggering results in the last 48 hours. So I'm just going to quickly draw this up so you guys have a bit of an idea. So we opened up here on the 3rd of January at 36 cents roughly. We shot up already and still currently as a recording around 74 cents. 100% increase, guys, in less than 48 hours. Absolutely phenomenal move from Power Ledger. It's one of my favorite projects for sure. And one thing to mention, as I said, if you did a fantastic video this morning with Dr. Vivek, we talked about the artificial intelligence integration and some of the solutions that Power Ledger are offering with their services solutions, especially in peer-to-peer trading. I'm really looking forward to releasing that video, hopefully Monday. We're just waiting for their final approvals of the edits. So yeah, I have been busy doing some interviews in the background that hopefully you guys will enjoy, and I think it would just emphasize the excitement around this project. And as I've always said, people underestimate the energy sector when it comes to blockchain. It's really underestimated. It's not very forefronted with education and knowledge in that space. So hopefully the duty that I have with the channel is to present that in more data and more information to you guys so you can understand it more. It's totally up to you, obviously, whether you enter these areas. But, you know, they had some great news recently around their Grid 2.0 program. We'll talk about that a bit more on Monday as well. But, you know, there's some really, really exciting things happening over in Power Ledger at the moment. They're recently moving or utilizing the Solana network to fork off their own blockchain as well, which is very much needed in the sphere of energy. You're talking about massive micro transactions regularly, daily, with millions upon millions of people using it. And this is where transactions per second becomes really lucrative when chains talk about this. But yes, they have some really significant things coming out. I think they launched a book. I think Dr. Gemma or Gemma Green, who we've interviewed before on the channel as well, they've released some form of book. So I'm going to try and get a hold of that. But I think that's had an influence in the price point. It sounds mad, but I think when people start reading these kind of books and understanding the sector a bit more and understanding how blockchain relates to this space, it really is absolutely fascinating. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure as we go along. But yes, Power Ledger, before we move on to other assets, yes, that is the big uptake that we've seen. As you can see, it's plowed through a lot of fib levels here, so it's very hard to indicate where we will bounce back to at this moment in time. But you can see clearly that we're matching up with this point here. April 2022 was the last time we saw this price point, so it gives you a bit of an indication of how long it's roughly taken to get back to these areas, albeit that it's been a sharp increase. I wasn't expecting this at all. I was expecting a short uprising movement, as we would expect in these kind of markets, trickling up to 74 cents over a long period of time, but it has done it within 2 days. And that's the crazy thing about some of these assets. The amount of volume that can go in so fast can really project things like this quite regularly. And you can even see this in the history of Power Ledger. If we just look at this, even just back here in October, you can see this happens in a reductive aspect as well. You can see even from the 19th of October all the way to the 25th, so the space of 4 days, 181%. It's absolutely phenomenal. And it happens regularly with Power Ledger. And it does really emphasize the fact that we've got to keep an eye on all the time potential respectable news, rumors of things that might be happening within these sectors and these opportunities, and try and learn that ahead of time. But even with that process in your mind, sometimes it is still very difficult because not many people are anticipating this kind of big move at all. Where is this going? Absolutely a big question. The 14-day RSI on the bottom left here is showing 87, which is quite high. So again, not financial advice, but if I was personally looking at this and I was new and I knew about the RSIs and where we were before, I'd be thinking there's not much higher possibility. Yes, of course it could still rise, but the gain opportunity isn't that much more, or shouldn't be in theory, based on those indicators. Even the 28-day is so high and the 90-day is high as well. So I've been patiently, personally waiting for Power Ledger to be dropping down a bit more to these conservative levels of between 25 and 27 cents. Which match up as well with the blue line here on one of the medium-term fib retracement levels that we drew in on one of the last Power Ledger videos. So the anticipation here is, and it's very much common sense to be honest, guys, we couldn't quite reach these areas up here, but we could argue that we will probably maybe stabilize ourselves, whether it's a couple of days or not, because again, if you look in the history of this, it tends to retrace quite quickly. There is an argument to say that if you missed that train, there's no harm in waiting potentially for these drop downs to even the 50 cent level again, and arguably a retest of this 40 cent area. Will it happen overnight? Possibly, because of the historic data that we've seen. Otherwise, it will probably be something that happens over a period of time. But one thing's for sure with Power Ledger, certainly since that June 2022 mark, is we've had good stability in this project and asset, and we're seeing more confidence as we get to these higher regions. They are staying there longer, and they don't tend to dip down to the lower regions much anymore either. There is an indication of the fact that we are in a bull cycle at the moment, or part of the bull cycle, but the emphasis on the fact that there is a lot more of a way to go with the likes of Power Ledger for sure. And in fact, if we pull that data back, I think the previous all-time high of $1.33 showcases that there's plenty of movement. So not necessarily always from today's price, but for argument's sake, that's still an 80% move to the previous all-time high. Hopefully, in my opinion, and selfishly, if we do at least at the bare minimum come down back to that 40 cent retest, that's still a good 200% gain onto the all-time high. But as things go usually, and we've got to remember, the energy sector is developing significantly with the likes of blockchain DLT technology, the likes of artificial intelligence, 5G, all the things we talk about on the channel. You've then got more people coming into crypto more than ever before. You've got more people understanding how things like within the energy sector, like peer-to-peer trading, becoming a prosumer instead of consumer, all these things will come into play, which is why I think we'll smash through that eventually, that previous all-time high, and head towards those structural numbers of $1.62. And I did mark in a previous video that I think personally this is realistic, around the 259 mark. Will it go higher than that? Potentially. But I think that will be confirmed more over the next few months than the next maybe year or so, where we have the continuous development of the energy sector, as I said, the awareness of this, but also the full structure completion of how Power Ledger will promote itself throughout the equation of its structure in terms of its tokenomics and how it will be used as a utility token in its own blockchain. That being said, all these ratings on the right hand side here are absolutely phenomenal. The year to date, 102%. The 1 year chart is showing 491. There is not many assets out there that pull this kind of chart movement. The only one I would say separate to this, outside the energy sector, you could argue is something like property in the real estate sector. And these are things that I've tried to go on about for some time to suggest that, you know, we need to start exploring these other areas. Everyone talks about dApps and wallets and the financial industry. There's so many sectors that blockchain can be applied to that are really exciting, a really big opportunity to take on that. So yeah, Lee, if you haven't heard of Power Ledger, not promoting my videos obviously too much, but go and check out the introduction video of Power Ledger, and definitely search for the interview we did with Dr. Gemma Green, who's one of the co-founders or CEOs of Power Ledger. I think you'll find it fascinating. And as I said, with any of these kind of projects, whether it's ones we're listing or talking about, or any projects in general that you guys come across, always do your own research and understand that, why am I invested in this? Okay, understand the project, understand the technology, what sector they are in, and what is that sector worth in 5 years, in 10 years. Obviously, that doesn't mean that if something's worth $1 trillion, it doesn't mean that token or projects can be worth 1 trillion, but it will certainly have a big piece of the pie of that monetary value, or potential monetary value for sure. And the energy sector is trillions upon trillions of dollars, of course. And Power Ledger, if you use things like CryptoSlate and you go into sector breakdowns of coins, Power Ledger, I think, is at the top. CryptoSlate was actually how I came across Power Ledger in the first place. In addition to how I talked to the people at Energy Web, for example, two different kind of solutions and services, really branching in their own different ways right now. But either way, both of them are very exciting in that sector, for sure. So that's Power Ledger. And we'll talk about Litecoin really, really quickly. And then if there's any others that people want to talk about, let's jump into them. But I was going to talk about Litecoin because there's talk about the ETF possibilities. And I've drawn a few things on here just as some reflective points. So I got into Litecoin back in 2020 and I sold it up around $160. And it went all the way up to like 400 something. So I missed out on that extra potential amount. But my point being here is that we look back at that March 2020 price point of around $25, I think it was. The upward trend took it to 1,282%, which is a huge, huge gain opportunity for Litecoin in that short period of time. Now, since that period, we did drop down quite a bit, of course, with the acceleration of the 2021 bull cycle that we had, and then the downward trend as most market assets have shown. Now, my point being is that if we could see that in March 2020 to that point in 2021, who's to say that in this next bull cycle, we could see even more of a rise? So if we marked that up at exactly the same, and we took even just the existing price point, which is currently $66, we'll go into the micro levels in a minute to show you where I'm thinking potentially for some slightly lower points of below 65. That would take us up to around $870. And the reason I put that in there is, one, the reflective pattern of the previous data trend in the all-time high and the bull cycle that we had, but also the other trends that we talked about earlier in all the other assets as well. This is applicable to anyone in the market, every project in the market. The mass adoption, the accessibility of crypto, the regulation, the compliance coming in will give so much trust and confidence to people that are on the outside of crypto right now or coming in. And like with 2021, Litecoin was always kind of seen as the silver of crypto. Like Bitcoin was the gold, Ethereum was its own thing, and like Litecoin was another currency. I mean, Litecoin's a fork of Bitcoin anyway, but it boasts like next to zero or like really low transaction fees, very high speed network, but it's a holder of value of money. This is used globally for payments and things like this. So there's always arguments that, oh, well, this blockchain does that, this chain does that. You can go around in circles all day long picking out networks and chains for sure. But Litecoin has always had a good residual value in it and is seen not just as a currency, but also the big chain and technology that it is. So when we comply all of these things together, it starts to paint a picture of realism behind these potential opportunities. First and foremost, I would love to see a 1,200% increase on the ones that I've been buying in the last few days. That would be incredible. But in that period of time, let's argue that we still have the ability, at least at the bare minimum, to get to that previous all-time high, which even still takes us to around 550% gain from the current price point. But then what I have done, to be fair, just for example purposes, when we get to that all-time high, we've got price brackets to consider on that way up. Now, I'm not going into too much detail because this is a bit far off yet. It might be in 9 months, 12 months, who knows. But we're going to use this as a reference point when we next do a Litecoin video, because these are really interesting areas of interest if you're considering trading at different levels, opportunities for buying and selling. Again, not financial advice, but this is what I'm going to be focusing on myself personally. And this doesn't look like too much, but look at this. Like, even just from that all-time high to the next track up is 478. So it's a good like $60-$70 intakes on each of those markers. But even to this bigger fib retracement level aspect, $412 to $650, that's quite a significant amount of money for a lot of people, including myself, in these opportunities that could be happening in such a short period of time. So Litecoin for me is a really interesting opportunity right now. As I said, with this ETF conversation, Grayscale are looking into this heavily, of course, and it's just the general emphasis that Litecoin has had always a good historic movement in bull runs. It's been around since I think 2013 or so. I think it was someone from MIT and someone from maybe Google, and they both had a massive interest in Bitcoin, and that's when they forked off with it and had this interest in Litecoin. What fascinates me at the moment as well is these indicators on the right hand side. The year is showing 12%. So it's not like the other ones where it's in either massive green or really big red area. These are slowly starting to stabilize themselves a lot more, getting to that point where it's almost getting to a green level, a zero level, a break-even level, to go, okay, now we feel there's a lot more upside than there would be downside. So that's what's exciting me at the moment about this. I do have some purchase orders. I have been buying manually at this $65 mark, but I have got some purchase orders back down around this 55, 57 mark, and also, sounds a bit silly, at this $40 mark as well, just in case we have a big crash at some point. And that is marked out purely, again, through data perspective of previous resistance and support lines that I've seen in the past on the Litecoin charts, and my experiences that I had back in 2020. And it's very, very similar feeling that I get inside and what I see in front of me, albeit that it's not at that $25, $30 mark anymore. But you have to understand as well that that was 3 or 4 years ago. 4 years ago, can you believe that? 2020, 4 years ago. But you're obviously going to understand there's more holders. In fact, I think it's the most active chain, and it's the most active address chain there is out there. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's true. Litecoin has a lot of power behind it, a lot of usage behind it. It's probably more focused on utility than it is perhaps the price points that people maybe oversee, and they look too much at the price comparisons than they do the actual usage of the chain or the technology. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is a technology as well, as is Litecoin. So there's some really interesting areas of opportunity, in my opinion, for Litecoin. Again, not financial advice, but just something I'm throwing out there because I think there's some interesting opportunity there for it. Going back to the live chat, do Power Ledger have any interesting partnerships? To be honest, they don't have like any giant ones in particular that they tend to shout out about, like Energy Web obviously go on about like EDF and Core, etc. So they are more focused on actual case studies, which is quite interesting because sometimes I find with like partnerships and things, it's a lot of like branding and naming, and there's some occasional collaboration, and then you look back at some articles from 2-3 years ago of partnerships and they haven't really done anything since. That's not directed at Power Ledger at all or anyone like that specifically. It's just how it goes. They do have some partnerships in the background for sure. Some are publicly known, but I would say that they're more focused on the residual utility. And you'll see that if you go on their website, some really good case studies. They're very heavy in Australia, doing some really interesting things where they've had some apartments built and they're actually utilizing the protocol of Power Ledger to power the peer-to-peer trading between communities, energy. To emphasize that a bit more, go and check out the intro video because I go into a bit more detail about how that works, how carbon credits work with tokenomics and blockchain. It really is absolutely fascinating to see that. So go check that out, Lee, for sure. Let's have a look at a few others here. Arthur, H bar is one I think where you will see it properly get going in about 5 to 10 years time. Yeah, do you know what? Cheeky Crypto was one that introduced me to H bar back in 2020. I didn't accumulate as much as I wanted to. I definitely took advantage of the price point when it went to around like 4.7 cents or something. Let's have a look at H bar really quickly. I've probably got about 5-10 minutes, guys. Sorry, we will do another live one next week. Hopefully you're enjoying it. I love talking about this stuff all the time. So yeah, we had this drop down in October. I had to get it. I was really pleased with my actions on there. I've sold a small amount of H bar in the recent uprise to around this 9 cent mark, purely because it was that kind of like double money opportunity, and I took out my initial investment, or some of it anyway. I think it was like something like 0.2, sorry, not 0.2, about 25% of it, of the worth. So still load in there. I'm waiting for the drop down. Basically, I'm not in a position at the moment to be like, I'm going to take that money, go and buy silly cars. Not that I would anyway. I'm not massively materialistic, to be honest, but for sure it's the anticipation that I'll sell up at this area. If it goes up higher, brilliant, we're still making profit, but I wanted the opportunity to stop using as much of my own capital as possible and start using money that I get through these trades. I'm not a massive trader, to be honest, but I do more recently, just because I know what I'm doing a bit more now. It's taken a few years to get used to that, so it's definitely a recommendation. If you're thinking this is exciting and getting into trading, I highly recommend to go through a few cycles at least, because there's a lot of learnings to be had. But your point is valid, Arthur. H bar for me personally, if we look at these previous movements of H bar all the way up here, I think the previous all-time highs were quite clear. I think it was around 32-36 cents, maybe even higher than that. I think it was like 60. I've got it written down somewhere, but I think we've got a high up here even on the chart at 60 cents. I'm not sure if that's correct. Sometimes it goes a bit AWOL, these charts, but yes, there's absolutely big opportunity from its current price point up into that region as well. If we remember a video ages and ages ago, I kind of drew this in already. There was an argument to say, again, going back to the point of the other assets that we spoke about, of these trends that are occurring worldwide, the mass adoption, the excitement. H bar excites me, especially with like the fractionalization of diamonds, for example. They were talking recently about asteroid mining. So that's like 10, 15, 20 years for real stability of a market opportunity for sure. But plant the seeds right now, absolutely. Because I think this is me personally, irrespective of the macro trades that I'm doing, the giant bulk, I would say like 70-80% of my holding of H bar will be holding on till we get way beyond those dollar marks. I think specifically by 2025, I truly believe that it's realistic to suggest that we could at least get to a minimum of $1.50. But I did have this prediction back in August, which I still stand by, to say that we could get a bit higher than that, maybe $2.50. Now, when I was watching these cheeky crypto videos in 2020, their anticipation, I believe, for H bar was around $2 to $3, which I think very much is quite accurate if we look at the fib levels. Anything beyond that will take substantial development in Hedera and substantial further confidence with people that are either holding it or utilizing it as a utility token within its own chain. And bear in mind, if you're new to crypto and you don't know what direct to cyclic graph is, again, check out the video I did on that, because it explains what kind of technology H bar is as a protocol. It's absolutely fascinating. You're right, Lee, yes. Still low compared to the all-time high. In fact, let's just, for your sake of mentioning that, let's just bring that price point down to its previous all-time high. I'm just going to adjust to its current price point, and then we'll look at maybe some selective price points in the lower regions as well. So currently at around 8.3 cents, and that's giving us a good 590, nearly 600% increase to that previous all-time high. If we reduce that slightly down and suggested that we might, it's definitely possible that we start retesting that 7.6 cent area. In my opinion, I still think the 6.3 and maybe the 5.48 aren't out of the question either. But if we just drag it down to that orange line that I drew, the reason I drew this orange line in before is I thought it was a really good action point for H bar to accumulate. It was certainly a decent area to look out for because of that history of H bar in the critical data points that we pointed out back here in 2020, and all the way through 2022 as well. It very much stabilized itself around there. So I'll just use that as a bite point as well. Again, 770% just to the all-time high, guys. So Lee, you're absolutely spot on to say that. There is definitely a big movement available in that. But let's just put it back to the existing price, which is roughly around here. And let's just, for example, or argument's sake, sorry, take it to that next fib level after the all-time high. That takes us to the 1,000. And it's, I wouldn't say it's rare to get these kind of percentage gains, because that's what the crypto space is very much like, especially in a bull cycle. The hype marketing, the influencer marketing channels, we don't shield coins, but channels do participate in that heavily, whether it's based on their holding or their paid marketing, whatever it might be. You do get this a lot. But HBAR Hedera is one of those that doesn't necessarily need all that. It will have it, but it doesn't need it. It's a phenomenal project. And again, the team I'm speaking to recently at Hedera, absolutely fantastic. Hopefully we'll have videos with those guys in the coming weeks, just through the work I'm doing with some blockchain companies and stuff. So it's very, very interesting. And Lee, your point there, exactly. The World Economic Forum. You can't ignore that. Anything related to the World Economic Forum, as much as I don't like them, you can't ignore for sure. We're just going to have a look quickly at XLM for Kingdom Sam. Let's have a look at that. And I'm going to have to wrap that up, guys. And I'm running out of time. I'll do a longer one next time. You can blame Spurs. Sorry. We'll probably lose after this. Like, this is what happens when I rush things. Let's get XLM up. So I've been holding this since 2020 as well. Stellar, great team behind this, done a lot of rebranding recently. I love the work they're doing towards helping trying to achieve this unbankable situation that we got in the world, like 2 billion people, over 2 billion people unbanked, becoming bankable with the ability of the utilization of smartphones, connection to the internet, Starlink obviously going up to hit those remote areas, and of course Hedera helping with those transactional perspectives, as well as the DAG protocol that operates as well. So currently it's around 11.10 cents. Now I need to look very quickly at my coin market cap, and I'll give you my average price point that I was buying. I haven't bought Stellar XLM for a long time, so it'd be interesting to see how far off it is from my previous purchases. So Hedera on my coin market cap is saying I was getting an average price of around 6 cents. So from my history of Hedera, the first HBAR tokens that I purchased, if you give me a second, I should be able to tell you. If I just pull this up, apparently I'm in good profit, which is nice, was December the 31st, 2020. So I was a bit of a latecomer to XLM in that run up, but I did get it in time for the bull cycle, didn't take advantage of it. As I said, I'm a long time holder for most of these assets. I just wait for the drops. Now I know a bit more about it, I will probably look out for those trade opportunities for sure. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, an average of 6 cents, considering it's 11 now. And wow, the previous all-time highs of Stellar speak for themselves for sure. I mean, look at that, all the way up to around 79.80 cents. Let's put that into a bit of perspective from its current price point. If it was to get to that previous all-time high again, 572%. That is absolutely brilliant. There is anticipation, as always, with a potential correction on its current price point. So let's just drag it down to a good bite point that I always look out for, is around that 7.7 or 7.9 cent mark. That gives us nearly, very close to 1,000% gain on the all-time high. Now, again, another one that Cheeky Crypto brought up in the sheet that they did in 2020. I'm pretty sure that they had HBAR priced around 2025. It's not guaranteed, obviously, but they calculated things kind of like what I've been talking about now, to that around that $3 to $5 mark. I think that's achievable potentially. We'll have to see how that plays out, but in the grand scheme of things, if I was just to quickly put the fib levels in from that top point, and to, let's just do it from our current price point at this moment in time, you can see there's some really interesting areas to target. Now for me personally, I will definitely be trying to take positions of selling off if I'm buying at these current positions, whether it was at 6 cents, 12 cents, 20 cents. I do think like the 62 and these 79 cent marks, you're going to see a lot of volatility at that previous all-time high for sure. But these next markers of 87 cents, definitely crucial. And of course, 127. But in between that, you're always going to have these macro movements as well. So that's no doubt going to be fizzling around that $1 mark at some point. You're going to see a lot of traction around there, just purely because it's a rounded number. There's no other excuse for it. It's a rounded number. It's sort of psychological number. But what tend to happen with a lot of traders is they'll pick a number roughly a couple of cents above and below that. Because sometimes what happens is you get a bit of a retracement after that dollar because of the excitement of it. Then you can sometimes get a pullback. So there's going to be a lot of movement in there. Again, I'll leave these in for future reference when we look at these charts in the future. But yeah, I think this is really exciting. At this moment in time, the RSI is 39 on the 14-day and 45 on the 28. I'm not overly mad with that, but I guess psychologically in my head, I'm just being a bit patient to see if we have a bit of a reduction on those increases that we've had, because we have hit the 13-cent mark quite a few times. That matches up with this green fib level here that we've got here. And of course, the retracements tend to hit back down, which is actually confirmed with two levels. One of the longer term red ones you can just about see, and just above it is this grey area here, which takes us to around that marker point of interested area, and also confirms the data points in the past of HBAR, which is why I always drew those levels and accumulated those levels based on that data. So there's an argument to say that we could potentially come and retrace that 10-cent mark at some point, and maybe even potentially lower. I may be dreaming. I would love to see a sub 10 cent again on HBAR for sure, and especially down at these regions again around 7 cents, and the lucrative 4.7, which is all the way back here. I think it was 23. I think we had June was the most recent time, 7.4 cents. You can't go wrong with that, in my opinion. I think it's phenomenal. And if you bear in mind, the 2020 March drop was around 2 cents, 2.6 cents. So it's done very well. We've had the bull cycle, we've had the drop down. You can see those new higher lows in the longevity of this token. And I think that's what gives us the excitement and perhaps the confidence to realize that we will definitely, or at least hopefully, hit that all-time high, with the advantageous point that with that new foundation, that new stability, we should be able to push ourselves up to those higher brackets, in my opinion, in the long run of HBAR. You see on the indicators on the right-hand side here as well, we are up on that year. When we next do a live video, I'll bring into the equation like Elliott waves as well, just give you a bit of reflection on the cycle periods that we are in. But it's absolutely phenomenal. I'm running out of time, guys. Just quickly, Lee, you mentioned Algorand. Yeah, I have been taking advantage of that increase for sure. I won't spoil that because I have got an Algorand video coming out tomorrow. But guys, I'm going to wrap this up there. Thank you for joining us. We will try to do a longer one next time. And I'll do a bit more promo beforehand. So there's got a lot of opportunity for people to shove their price predictions, their asset requests on these as well. And keep an eye out for the other videos. Now I'm getting my voice back a bit more. We will do that for sure. So guys, thanks for jumping in on this. Thanks for getting involved in the live chat as well. We'll do more of these for sure. There's so much to talk about in the crypto space, so I can't keep doing these individual videos all the time. So it's nice to do these live ones every now and then for sure. So guys, thanks very much for watching this. We'll see you in the next live video. Take care. See you soon. And obviously, come on, you Spurs. Let's go. Bye-bye.